Eric Barnes, publisher of the Memphis Daily News. Thanks for joining us. We are joined tonight by State Representative Steve McManus from representing Cordova. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Also Bill Boyd from the Memphis City Council. Thank you for being here.
My pleasure.
Jim Tomasic from Cordova's Voice.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And Bill Dries, senior reporter with the Memphis Daily News. We'll start with you, Steve. The annexation, it's complicated. We'll get into some of the history of it. We'll get into where we are now, but there's some change in the air. The state legislature in this past session put a moratorium in place. Why a moratorium, and what do you all hope to get out of this moratorium?
Yeah, sure. There's a real sense going on in Nashville, and you can really feel it. And the bottom line is that our constituents are really saying we want more of a voice when it comes to annexation issues. We are one of a handful of states in the United States that still allow a municipality to really exercise their heavy hand of government and simply come in and take a particular territory. And there's no doubt about it that we've had a tough time when it comes to the economy. And we seem to be seeing more and more of this annexation issues as the economy was in pretty tough, in pretty tough straits. So that's what we're hoping for right now. What we're considering is a moratorium for about a year to see if really we want to change the law and become one of the majority of states that will say if a particular area is going to be annexed, it's going to be done by referendum, meaning you have a vote versus simply giving that power to the municipality.
And that's a vote of the people there being annexed.
That's exactly
which
right.
Right now doesn't exist. And I think that's part of your concern, Jim. You are in an area that has not been annexed by the city of Memphis?
No, we were just annexed recently,
Yep.
and this situation is, we were not even aware that this was even going on. I guess we were minding our own business, and the next thing I know, we get a notice in the mail saying that we owe taxes, but not only taxes starting at that time, they're billing us for a period of time before that, which drove our house notes up in the South Cordova area up a lot. There's no evidence that we received any services from the city of Memphis prior to this time. So I'm not exactly sure how in the world they could back tax you for something that you did not receive. And it really has the people in this area up in arms. And we've had some meetings where 500 people showed up. These are the people who could make the meeting showed up. And they're all upset that this has happened without their ability to have a vote to say, we want to be part of Memphis or we don't. Something that happened, if I go too long, just cut me off, but something that happened in Millington, it would be a perfect example about how this should be run. Millington went to annex an area, two areas, Lucy and Kerr. Kerr is north of them, Lucy is south of Millington. And they gave the people a choice to be annexed. This is even with the current laws, and this is not long ago. They gave them the choice to be annexed. The people in the Kerr area said, no, we don't want to be annexed. The people in the Lucy area said, sure, we want to be part of Millington. Millington said, welcome aboard, Lucy. We'll talk to you later, Kerr.
Okay.
That gave the people a voice, and one way or the other.
Right, right. Bill Boyd, where do you stand on annexation? I mean, right now it's the city council that votes, and has areas that it's identified to annex. It's taken areas over the past few years, including this area. Is it a proper role and a proper process right now for the city of Memphis to annex this way?
Well, I think it is. Of course, I'm the only one representing the city here, so I presume I'm also representing the city administration in a way. So I can't speak for them, but and I can't speak for the rest of the council. But I'd like to correct a couple of things that Jim said earlier, and that's the city administration is not taxing those people beginning January 1. It's a fiscal year and has been ever since I've been in city government, and Bill knows I've been in a long time. But it's a fiscal year beginning July 1. So that's when the taxation began through June the 30th. Also, this is going back. If he didn't know it, and I don't doubt that you did not know it was in the works, it's been in the works since 2001, year 2001, and a group of about 5 citizens out there in the South Cordova area, they came with a lawsuit, And that thing was pending for a number of years, and it was finally in Chancery Court here in Shelby County. Finally, the judge ruled on it and dismissed it, the lawsuit, in June of 2011. So it was not properly answered by the plaintiffs in the case, those 5 individuals, within a month's time when they were required to by July of 2011. So it became annexed at that point, but
going forward, let's skip that for 1 second and say, going forward, would you be opposed to changes in the way annexations are done in the future? In the sense that people who are to be annexed would have a voice in it in the way that Representative McManus and Jim here are talking about, and other states do it?
Well, it's probably not politically prudent for me to say this, but I have been around a long time, and I've witnessed the Fraser annexation and on down the line from there, Parkway Village, Whitehaven, Oak Haven, Raleigh, all of those leading up to the big Cordova annexation some years back. I think it is a proper way because I don't believe if it's passed in Nashville, like Steve says these other states have done recently, gone to, I don't think the citizens would ever approve any annexation.
But would that be bad?
Well, it's a fairness thing, in my opinion.
Yeah.
You've got our city council attorney, Alan Wade, made a statement that it upset a lot of South Cordova people by saying they, without being annexed in an unincorporated area, that they're taking advantage of a lot of the services in the city. Well, I know some of the residents out there said, I've never seen a city police car and all this kind of thing, but no, they haven't. All those citizens, it's just kind of an imaginary line. They're right across the street in some instances of a city, citizens who are paying all the taxes for the streets, the street lights, the people that, those residents go to work, they go to church, they go all the entertainment places in the city, their doctors and all like that. So they utilize those services that only the city of Memphis taxpayers pay for. So it's a fairness thing as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. Let me just say in response to that, you know, Bill just mentioned that if it were put to a vote, that most citizens would not want to become a part of Memphis. What does that say about Memphis? And that's even what the mayor said. The mayor said, look, I think we've got to stop acting like this when it comes to this. We got to annex everything. We got to think more about what we can do to make Memphis a better, more vibrant city. And at that point, then maybe people will say, yeah, I'd like to vote on it because maybe I would like to be a part of Memphis. And that, I think, is critical to this conversation. It's just give the people the right to vote. And you know something? If you need the money and people have the right to vote, you are going to look within, and you are going to do everything you can to make this city a better city and a place to live. So, but let me just say something too about the process of this annexation in South Cordova. It was a PR nightmare for the city that they did what they did. It was a PR nightmare. Not one of us knew. Not one of us knew. And I'm the elected official out in that area as a state representative. I never knew it. Nobody ever called me and let me know. We woke up, as you say, Jim, we woke up that morning to find out that we had been annexed. And that was a horrible way to conduct the business of annexation. And you know something too? You'd be hard pressed too to find anybody living in South Cordova or Cordova that would say that Memphis came in and annexed us, you know, for the betterment of our welfare. To all of us, it was simply a land grab. It was done to generate income. And of course, the city of Memphis will never say that. But, you know, it didn't take long for us to know that the city of Memphis's finances, thanks to the letters that we received from, you know, from State Comptroller Justin Wilson, proved just that. Memphis is in dire straits. They need the money, and it all became crystal clear after we were annexed that was the case.
Jim, respond. Well, as somebody who lives in South Cordova, are there services you've been getting? I mean, do you feel like you should be paying for roads and so on that you're using that that you weren't paying for before you were annexed?
That point where we live across the line and there's services that we cross across the line and therefore we should be paying taxes. If we're going to a business in that area, we're paying taxes when we use that business. We're using sales taxes or whatever. If we buy gasoline, we're paying the taxes that are have, related to whatever product or service that we're using over there. And okay, so how close to the line is it that it becomes relative? There's people live in Mississippi who come to Memphis to work. Are you going to tax them? People in Arkansas who come to Memphis to work. You're going to tax them? What about Tipton County, Fayette County? Why is it just because we're in the county of Shelby County, we're supposed to bail the city of Memphis out of their financial mayhem that they've created? We didn't make this mess. We don't want anything to do with it. The citizens of Cordova don't want anything to do with trying to repair your problems.
Now, if I understand how this works, and I'm sure will be quick to correct me, when you moved, or when Cordova has been in this annexation reserve area for quite some time, is that correct?
Yes.
So there was always the prospect, that Cordova would be, I don't know when you moved there, but for many of the people who've moved to Cordova, which has grown dramatically over the last 10 years, they always moved there knowing, or they may not have been aware, but that area was always in the annexation reserve. It was always part of the growth plan. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So at some point, do people will say, wait, you moved there knowing that this could happen, or you live there knowing this can happen? Isn't that a certain amount of responsibility that is on you when you're in the suburbs and the way the annexation, whether you like it or not, this is the way annexation works in Tennessee?
Well, I'm not totally against annexation.
Okay.
Well, I am as far as I'm concerned, but for the people to have the right to vote, that's what I have a problem with here. You're not allowing us to have the right to vote to say whether we want to be in there. We might want to be like Kerr and say.
But I do have to say, there are quite a few, and I knew about the annexation, I knew about that. But I also will say that based on the number of people that showed up at that first meeting, when the mayor came out, with his entourage, I will say that there are an awful lot of people that had absolutely no idea.
Yeah, sure.
That they were in this boundary. None.
And a court fight over that many number of years, you're going to see some turnover in property. You're going to have some people who move into an area who probably should have been told, by the way, you're in the City of Memphis Annexation Reserve area, but who probably weren't told about it.
Right.
At the same time, Bill, I think the city also, because they have annexation reserve areas, not just Memphis, but these other areas, they have also extended services into that area, have they not?
In South Cordova.
Please define them.
In the annexation areas in general, in Whitehaven.
Oh, yes,
there were city
of
services
course.
that were extended there
Matter
before
of fact, July, yes. And I was going to say this, as an old title insurance company man, when a person moved into South Cordova area, at the closing, they should have been notified that there was a lawsuit pending. That should have been on your closing statement there. Should have been
Is that 3-inch stack of papers you
no,
got
so
to
it's
go
about
through?
it's about 2 pages, front
Well,
and back.
it's stuck in a stack of forms that you have to file to buy a house.
No, so you get one to take with you. You probably got it at your house. I know I have mine, the closing statement.
I'm
But anyway,
not sure.
That's a forewarning there.
But we're at any point, I apologize, but this is maybe just way too simplistic. I would have assumed that in the same way that you get from the city of Memphis and from the Shelby, and I live in the city and Shelby County, you get this notice, your taxes. It's just a letter, a little formal letter. You might choose to throw it away, but it's there and it says that. I would assume that the city would send a letter to everyone in an area that's about to be annexed saying, we're about to be annexed.
You would think so.
Did that not happen because of the lawsuit? Or just it's because it's not required?
I think there was one final lawsuit, or whatever you want to call it, dismissed by the court right prior to the announcement. I learned of it a few days before they did.
Is that, oh really?
Yes, just a few days before.
So the lawsuit kind of came to, it had been hanging there, and finally the string breaks.
Final.
And the annexation is on. Representative McManus, this seems to be something the legislature has to consider, and while you've heard from citizens in these areas who are affected, I would imagine you're going to hear from some municipal leaders who are going to say, wait a minute, for years we extended sewer services. For years we prepared for this annexation, and now all of a sudden after that investment, you want to put this up to a vote of the people after we've already made an investment in that area. Mm-hmm. Is that a dilemma for the legislature?
Sure it is. Ultimately, there's going to be a showdown, ultimately. between the Tennessee Municipal League, a very, very strong lobbying group in Nashville, and representatives like myself that are listening very closely to what the citizens are saying. And that's going to be the showdown. And it's probably going to happen in January when we see quite a number of bills that will be introduced that simply say, you know, the way the public chapter is right now, 1101, the way it is right now, you can leave that in place basically where there's going to be a sharing between city and county, but give the citizens the right to vote. That is a voice that's very, very strong going on right now in Nashville.
Let's come back to the quandary that Bill described. And I'm not saying this happened in South Cordova, but in areas it has happened where a municipality has said, all right, we're going to extend sewers, we're going to build some roads, we're going to go ahead and put a fire station up, and you might pay for some of that, but you're not paying for all. But we're going down the road of annexing you. Okay, is that a difference? Does any change in the law have to treat them differently than, say, an area that's just in an annexation reserve where no investment has been made?
Don't know exactly the answer to that question yet. It's being studied right now by a joint committee up in Nashville, and it's going to be going on probably for another 2 weeks at least. But these are the questions that we need to address to introduce the proper legislation in January that deals with these very specific issues. It'll probably be long. It'll have some amendments before it finally gets to a final vote. But those are the things we're in the process of discussing right now.
May I go back to the citizens having a right to vote on it?
Yeah.
Why are these people living right next door to Memphis now if they don't like Memphis or it's a terrible, situation? And why do they go to church? Why do they go to work? Why do they do all these things inside the city of Memphis if they think it's a terrible city to live next door to? But they get their livelihood and everything from the city of Memphis. As far as a utopian city, I still feel that they would not vote to double their taxes just for no reason at all, other than, as Steve says, Representative McManus says, a land grab. It was not a land grab. It goes back to 2001. That's when Harrington and his administration asked for it to be annexed. And this city council, by the way, or the administrator, had absolutely nothing to do with that annexation because it's been pending all those years.
Okay. Jim.
But as far as the land grab, excuse me, it's almost a wash as far as the expenses and the taxes it brings in.
Because now you do have to extend services, whether or not they were there before. You do have to extend police, fire, and roads.
Anytime the city plans to annex, they have to give a 5-year plan of services.
Yeah.
Which the city does everything except street lights.
Okay. Okay. We kept Jim. I'm sorry. We kept you out here.
I really appreciate Councilman Boyd's making it very clear that his position is that the people should not have the right to vote whether or not they're annexed into a city or not. The idea that there were services that were brought out into the area prior to annexation, I'm at a loss for what that was, because these neighborhoods were built back in the 80s. My house was built in 85, I think. From what I understand, the contractors came in and they did all this work. Now the city's getting all this stuff for free, plus taxing the citizens.
I can give you one fine example, Jim. Do you know Gene Bryan lives out in your area?
No.
Gene Bryan.
Oh, yes, I do.
Before annexation, the nearest fire station and ambulance service was 6 and 8 miles away. Now it's 1.5 miles away. He was having a heart attack, and he called for the ambulance service, which was just right down on Sanga, and he credits them for saving his life. He told me that personally.
Well, is that a city fire department?
Yes, that's a city fire department.
What?
The same is true with police services. Your police services are better now. Your water,
no,
your
police
water.
services are not.
Yes, it is. The water is less.
We'll see what the Shelby County Sheriff's saying about that.
Well,
let's give you a sense to respond to some of that,
Yes,
Jim. I mean, you live there, and I mean, obviously, this is front and center for you. These services are being given now. So, fire, ambulance, police. Do you feel like, I mean, a really basic question, do you feel like you're getting your money's worth? Your taxes have almost doubled since you got annexed.
Absolutely not. Yeah. We're not gaining anything. If the people of Shelby County want another fire station, the people of Shelby County should work to have their own fire station built. We should not need the city of Memphis to come in and take care of us. We can do it ourselves.
Yeah.
And I'm very happy with the sheriff's department.
Right.
I can't say that I would be with the Memphis Police Department with their history.
Right, and I believe you or an affiliate group tried to go about pursuing de-annexation. Is that correct? And that the AG
Yeah, we
bill
still
came-
are.
You still are.
We're-
The AG came back and said there's no path. The state attorney general.
We disagree with the
Okay.
AG.
Okay. So that pursuit is not over in terms of a
Oh, by
legal.
no means.
Okay. But also that could come back to you all in the legislature. There is no, according to the AG, state attorney general, there's no path to de-annexation. But that's something. I mean, the legislature could change.
Well, that's right. You know, and again, the same people that really feel like we need a vote also feel like we're denied a vote there too. I get it. I get what the AG is saying. You know, the AG is saying obviously that when it comes to the path to de-annexation, it must begin with your elected city officials, i.e. the city council.
Yeah.
That's where it needs to begin. And I understand that. So that's where, I mean, at the last meeting that we had at the Cordova Voice, I mean, that's really what I told the crowd there. I said, folks, you now need to begin to petition your city council. That's where, that's really where the focus needs to be. And in the process, well, I tell you, my hat's off to these people. These people are at it. This is what changes America. This is what changes laws, is when people stand up and say, we're not going to take this anymore, folks. We expect a vote, and you are our elected official, and we expect you to get to a situation where you will give us that vote. You got to listen to these folks.
Yeah,
I mean, they're speaking loud and clearly. And I'm telling you, there is a sentiment right now sweeping Nashville that is going to be a very, very positive one, because we're listening to these people, and you got to stand up to the Tennessee Municipal League, and you got to say, look, I got news for you. I'm representing my people, and they demand a vote. Okay,
Jimmy, you were going to say something.
I agree 100% with what he just said. We have got to make this, we've got to put, we've got to take control of the situation. We are the citizens of this area in Cordova. It is up to us to make the difference. And to start with is we have to ask our Councilman Boyd here, will you please do this? Will you please get a referendum going? And he has stated that he is representing the city, and he is not interested in doing it. He told me on the phone that he would not do that. He would not support that effort.
Okay, let me get Bill a chance. Go ahead.
So now we've asked, our next step is, there's a recall coming up in January where we can recall Councilman Boyd, and that is, my plan is to start a recall on him.
Okay.
And
let me give you a chance to respond to some of that. I mean, you don't want to move forward, Councilman, with a referendum among, to let people have a voice in this. I mean, there's.
That's fine that people have a voice, but I just stated earlier in this whole conversation was I didn't think people would vote for any annexation under any circumstances, no matter what city they're next to.
Are you concerned about a recall?
No, I'm not concerned about that at all.
Okay. Bill, just a couple minutes left here.
Is there time for a recall given that we have city elections in 2015?
Yes, we have to wait till January 1st to recall them. I've researched these recall laws, the city councils, the city charter.
Right.
And we have to wait till January 1st, but we're going to have our ducks in a row to start the recall at that time.
The city council included that recall provision in some charter changes that you all voted on just recently, Bill. One of the changes that the Memphis Charter Commission considered but rejected was the idea of voting on annexations as well. So it didn't make it past the Memphis Charter Commission. There was some sentiment on the council to allow the annexations based on the acrimony from, in particular, the Raleigh annexation, the Whitehaven annexation. But there was more sentiment on the council against that, and even some of the suburban mayors were against the idea of that based on the extension of services for it. Representative McManus, is it possible that legislation that you all are studying could consider some kind of interim provision for what municipalities have already extended? In other words, say, all right, starting after this date in the future, there will be annexations, so that everyone is clear on that.
Sure, Bill. There definitely could be that, and I think that is also being considered right now with the study that's going on in Nashville. Yes.
Is there a reaction in other parts of the state? I mean, sometimes we get real Memphis focused that this is the only place where there's a fight. It can't be the only place where there's a fight.
No, not at all.
I mean, there must be folks outside Davidson, Nashville, or outside of other cities.
That's right. The slew of bills that were introduced this year were from Hamilton County.
Chattanooga.
They are also being forced into annexation, and they are absolutely rebelling, just the same way the people in South Cordova. And you know something? Hats off to them. Hats off to our people here in Cordova. This is how laws change, and people have to step up. You know, as we mentioned before too, you know, again, one of the reasons why we stepped up like this too was, I mentioned before, it was a PR disaster. You had mentioned, this may be very simplistic, but shouldn't a letter or something have gone out to explain to people that indeed there was going to be an annexation within the next 2 weeks or a month? Yes, there should have been.
So we've got just a couple of minutes, actually seconds left. Councilman Boyd, are there any pending annexations that should be announced that maybe some other folks don't know about? Just a couple
That originates with the city administration, not with the city council.
Fair enough, fair enough. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, Bill. Thank you for joining us. Join us again next week. Good night.